Imagine waking up in a tomb. Not literally, but imagine the shock, the silence, the sudden awareness that something unimaginable has happened. Something that flips your perception upside down. The resurrection story isn't just about miracles, it's about transformation, awakening, and confronting the unknown. Every culture has its own version of this story, and humans have been obsessed with it for thousands of years. Some call it divine, some call it myth, and some call it consciousness itself taking an experimental leap. The story is symbolic, but it resonates because it speaks to something deep inside us, the fear of ending and the thrill of beginning again. What if it's less about historical accuracy and more about our inner understanding of life and death? What if the rising from the dead is something we experience every time we leave an old version of ourselves behind? Grab your snacks, we're spiraling deep today. When we look at the resurrection story, our first thought is usually Christianity, but the roots go far deeper. Ancient civilizations, from Egypt to Greece, Rome, and beyond, told stories of gods and heroes dying and returning. Osiris, Dionysus, Mithras, all of them underwent transformations, death, and rebirths, mirroring the cycles of nature itself. Humans have always been fascinated with life, death, and renewal. Could it be that the resurrection story is a continuation of these same impulses, reframed from a different time and audience? The symbolism is everywhere. Death wasn't always final. It was a pause, a doorway. Early humans observed seasons, growth, harvest, and decay, seeing parallels in human existence. Could the resurrection story simply be a narrative reflection of our observation of life's cyclical patterns? And why are we so drawn to it, even now, thousands of years later? There's a strange, magnetic power in stories about returning, about awakening, about change that we can't seem to resist. Even the cultural adaptations, from pagan spring festivals to modern Easter, show a deep human desire to externalize these cycles. When you celebrate Easter, eat chocolate eggs, or see lilies on a table, you're participating in a story that predates the Bible by centuries. It's history, symbolism, and human psychology rolled into one, reminding us that resurrection isn't just a tale. It's an experience we've been encoding for millennia. And think about this. What if all of these early stories were humanity experimenting with consciousness itself? Recording the rise and fall, the waking and sleeping, the living and dying of perception. It makes the story feel alive, as if it's less about facts and more about understanding the human mind. The resurrection is one of the most powerful symbols in human history. It's not just a miracle, it's a metaphor for change, renewal, and personal evolution. Life is full of endings, careers, relationships, habits, identities. Every time we let go of something that no longer serves us, we experience a tiny resurrection. And humans, perhaps instinctively, turn these experiences into stories because narrative is how we process reality. There's always a physical symbolism. Eggs, seeds, lilies, all of these symbols are about hidden potential and rebirth. The egg, for instance, holds life unseen, ready to emerge at the right time. Isn't that strikingly similar to how resurrection is described? Something appears gone, but the potential has always been there, waiting for the right moment. The story also teaches observation. Death and rebirth are events, yes, but they're also perspectives. From one angle, life ends. From another, it continues. From a third, we only realize the shift once we're awake to it. Ancient humans encoded this awareness into ritual, myth, and celebration. We may think the resurrection is just about Jesus, but it's really about consciousness noticing cycles and patterns and learning from them. And in a modern sense, isn't that what we're still doing? Each time we reinvent ourselves, each time we confront a challenge, each time we rise from the tomb of old habits or beliefs, we're participating in the same story. The resurrection isn't over. It's ongoing. It's personal. It's profoundly human. Early Christianity didn't invent resurrection. It adapted it. At a time when empires were shifting and communities were facing chaos, stories of life returning after death offered hope and meaning. Imagine a small village struggling to survive in uncertain times. The idea that death isn't final, that life finds a way, that transformation is possible. That's more than theology. That's survival psychology. The resurrection also functioned as a teaching tool. It's not just about the miraculous. It's about learning from the narrative, internalizing the lesson that change is constant and sometimes inevitable. Early followers would have seen parallels between the story and their own experiences of loss, fear, and rebirth. It's fascinating to think about how these stories evolve. Oral traditions, cultural adaptation, political influence, all of these shaped the resurrection story over centuries. And yet, the core idea remained the same. Life, transformation, renewal, awareness. How often do we consider that the story isn't about one person or event, but about human consciousness itself grappling with impermanence? And here's the kicker. The story spread not because of historical proof, but because it resonated. Because it tapped into something deeply wired in our brains. Humans respond to transformation narratives because they simulate experience. Seeing someone rise allows us to process fear, hope, and change safely, mentally, emotionally. This is why the story is timeless. The resurrection story isn't just historical or symbolic. It's deeply psychological. Every ending is a form of death. Every beginning is a form of life. People studying neuroscience and psychology have found that humans are drawn to these narratives because they mirror internal processes. Letting go, confronting fear, embracing transformation. On a spiritual level, the story invites reflection. It asks us, when have you died and risen again? When have you shed one version of yourself and stepped into another? Consciousness is always experimenting, always observing, and the resurrection is a metaphor for that ongoing process. Even the act of celebrating it, marking it on a calendar, participating in ritual, or watching stories unfold on screen, we're practicing awareness. We're acknowledging cycles, noticing change, and training our minds to see patterns in chaos. Isn't that fascinating? That a story written millennia ago can still teach us about our own consciousness today? And maybe, just maybe, that's the reason the story resonates universally. Because it isn't about religion or politics or miracles. It's about the human mind noticing itself. And that's kind of mind-blowing when you really think about it. So here we are, standing at the empty tomb of thought. We've explored history, symbolism, psychology, and consciousness itself. The resurrection isn't just a story that happened once. It happens every day. Every time we shed an old version of ourselves, every time we observe life with awareness, every time we rise from the patterns that keep us stuck. It's profound, it's human, and it's ongoing. If this video got you thinking, leave a like, comment your thoughts. What story do you see in your own life that's waiting to rise? See you guys in the next spiral. Peace.